Chapter 1. The life I thought was everything. If I told you that divorce saved my life, would you believe me? Most people think divorce is only pain, but for me, it became the beginning of freedom. Let me tell you how it all started. My story may sound strange, but every word is true. This is a life I lived. The life I thought was perfect and the life that almost broke me. My name is Elisa. I am 69 years old, and I live in the United States. People often see me now and call me strong. But I want to share with you the truth. I want to share with you my journey, my past life. I was married for many years. When I say many years, I mean most of my life. I entered that house as a young bride with dreams. But those dreams slowly turned into duties. From the first morning of my marriage till the last day with my husband, I lived for him. I cooked 3 meals a day. I pressed his shirts. I cleaned the floors. I kept everything in order so that he never had to lift a finger. People praised me as a good wife, and I thought that was my identity. I believed my worth was in serving him. I never asked for anything for myself. I did not buy clothes for me without his permission. I did not meet friends without telling him. My days started with his needs and ended with his moods. Sometimes I was tired. Sometimes I was sick. But I told myself this was love. I told myself a wife must sacrifice. I thought if he was happy, I was happy. That belief was so deep in me that I never even thought of life outside him. You may ask me, didn't you feel trapped? The truth is, I did not know I was trapped. I thought that life was normal. I thought love meant giving everything and expecting nothing. I thought silence was peace. Looking back now, I realize how blind I was. But then at that time, I believed this was the only way to live. There were moments when I wanted to say, I am tired, but I swallowed my words. There were nights when I wanted to talk about my feelings, but he was always busy with himself. I waited for him to notice me, to ask me how I felt, but that moment never came. Still, I never complained. I thought maybe this is how all marriages are. Maybe I am too weak to ask for more. I remember a day when I had fever. My body was burning. My head was heavy. But he asked me to press his clothes. I stood there with tears in my eyes, pressing his white shirt while my hands shook. I wanted him to say, "Leave it. You need rest." But instead, he said, "Don't leave wrinkles." That day, I felt something break inside me. But still, I did not fight back. I told myself, this is my duty. My life became a pattern. Wake up, cook, clean, serve, sleep again and again every single day. I lost myself. I forgot what I liked, what I wanted, what made me smile. People outside thought we had a perfect marriage. They said, "Look at her. She takes such good care of him. She is so lucky." Lucky. That word cut me like a knife because deep inside I felt empty. I was not lucky. I was lost. But I held on to hope. I kept telling myself, one day he will see how much I love him. One day he will thank me. I waited for years, but that day never came. Instead, something else came. Something that turned my life upside down. One evening, he sat at the table. His face was serious. His eyes cold. I thought maybe he was upset about work. I asked him softly if he wanted tea. He shook his head and said words I never thought I would hear. I want a divorce. At first, I laughed nervously. I thought he was joking. How could he say that after so many years? But his face did not change. My hands shook. My voice cracked. I begged him. I said, "We can work it out. I will change. I will do more." I was ready to bend even further. even though I was already bent to the ground. But he was not listening. His mind was made. He said he wanted his freedom. He said he was tired. Tired? Those words felt like poison. Tired of what? I gave him everything. What more did he want? That night, I cried like a child. I held his hand. I begged him not to leave, but he pulled away. The man for whom I had lived every second of my life was walking out, and I could do nothing to stop him. I felt like my whole world was collapsing. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I wanted to run, but my legs were heavy. It was the most helpless moment of my life. For the next days, I tried to stop him. I cooked his favorite meals. I spoke sweetly. I prayed. I thought maybe he would change his mind. But nothing worked. Papers were signed. My marriage ended with a few strokes of a pen. Just like that, decades of sacrifice were thrown away. Do you know what it feels like to see your whole life disappear in a moment? It is like standing in a storm with no shelter. It is like drowning and no one reaching out a hand. That was me, a woman who gave everything, now left with nothing. And yet I want to tell you something. That moment, as painful as it was also the beginning of my true story. At that time, I did not know it. At that time, all I saw was darkness. But life had a plan for me. A plan I could not see, but a plan that would one day set me free. This is where my journey begins. This is the story of how I lost everything, and how that loss became the door to a life I never imagined. Chapter 2. The day my world fell apart. I still remember the night he said it. The words cut me in half. Richard looked at me and said he wanted a divorce. His voice was calm, but my world shook. I thought it was a bad dream. I thought he would take his words back, but he did not. He looked at me with cold eyes and no care. I begged him. I told him I could change. I told him we could try again. I promised I would do more. I promised I would give up even the little I had kept for myself. I was ready to lose everything if it meant he stayed. But nothing touched him. His heart was far away. I held his hands and cried. I asked him to remember our years together. I reminded him of the home we built. I reminded him of the love I gave. But he said nothing that gave me hope. He only said he was tired. He only said he wanted peace. I could not understand. How could peace mean leaving me? That night I could not sleep. I sat on the bed and cried until my body shook. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I wanted to run, but my legs felt weak. I pressed my face into the pillow, and it was wet with tears. I felt like a child who had lost everything at once. In the morning, I tried again. I cooked his favorite food. I smiled when he walked in. I spoke gently, hoping he would soften, but he ate in silence. He looked at me like I was not even there. My heart broke again. For days, I kept trying. I prayed in the night. I begged in the morning. I told him I could not live without him. But his eyes told me the truth. He had already left me in his heart. His body was there, but his love was gone. One evening, he placed papers on the table. Divorce papers. My hands shook as I touched them. I asked him not to do it. I said we could fix things. He said it was too late. He said nothing could change his mind. My chest burned. I thought my breath would stop. I tried to delay it. I told him I needed more time. He said I could take a few days, but it would not change anything. He was sure. His voice was steady. Mine was broken. I felt like I was fighting a war I could not win. When I finally signed the papers, it felt like death. I saw my name next to his, broken apart forever. The pen slipped in my hand, but I still wrote it. My tears fell on the page. I wanted to tear it apart, but it was done. Years of marriage ended in a few strokes. After that, I watched him pack. He took his clothes, his books, his things. I stood in the corner, unable to move. Each item he placed in the bag felt like a piece of me. I wanted to scream, "Stop! This is my life, too." But I said nothing. My lips would not move. When he walked out the door, I followed him with my eyes. He did not look back. He did not pause. He left like I was nothing. The door closed, and with that sound, my world collapsed. I fell to the floor and cried until I could not breathe. I felt like my soul had been ripped apart. The days after were worse. I walked through the house like a ghost. I touched his shirts still hanging in the closet. I smelled them and cried. I sat at the table and looked at his empty chair. I made tea and poured 2 cups by mistake. Then I remembered he was gone. The pain was sharp. People called me. Some gave advice. Some told me to move on. Some said I was free now. Their words hurt me more. They did not know my heart. They did not know I had given my entire life to him. Without him, I felt worthless. Nights were the hardest. I lay in bed, staring at the empty space beside me. I hugged the pillow, pretending it was him. I closed my eyes, hoping to wake up and find it was just a dream. But every morning, reality hit me again. He was gone. I kept blaming myself. I asked what I had done wrong. Was I not loving enough? Was I not kind enough? I searched for answers, but there were none. The truth was simple. He wanted to leave. He chose to walk away. And I could do nothing. I thought my story ended that day. I thought I would spend the rest of my life in darkness. But I was wrong. Life had other plans for me. I could not see it yet. But something new was waiting. The day my world fell apart. That was the day my new story began. Like, subscribe, and share. Chapter 3, 6 Months of Darkness. When Richard walked out, my world went silent. The house felt heavy, but it was not the walls. It was my heart. I sat in one place for hours, not knowing what to do. I waited for him to come back. I waited for the sound of his steps, his voice calling my name. But nothing came, only silence. The first night alone was endless. I lay in bed and kept turning to the side where he once slept. I reached out with my hand, but the space was empty, cold. I hugged the pillow and cried until my throat hurt. My tears would not stop. My chest ached as if it would break. I thought, this is how my life will end. Alone, crying, forgotten. Morning came, but it gave me no comfort. I sat at the table with a cup of tea. I made 2 cups by mistake, then remembered he was not there. I stared at the second cup until the tea grew cold. I threw it away, but the pain stayed. Day after day, I repeated the same. Wake up, cry, sit and wait. I had no energy. I had no hunger. Food had no taste. My body grew weak, but I did not care. I told myself, why eat? Why live when the person you live for is gone? I stopped meeting people. I did not answer calls. When neighbors knocked, I pretended I was not home. I did not want their pity. I did not want their advice. I wanted only Richard, and he was gone. At night, I heard whispers in my mind. They said I was worthless. They said I was old. They said no one needed me. I believed those voices. I believed I was nothing without him. I pulled the blanket over my head and cried until my body shook. Sleep never came easily. I closed my eyes, but memories of him filled my mind. His laugh, his voice, his touch. Then I remembered his last words. I want a divorce. The memory stabbed me again and again. Weeks turned into months. 6 months of pain. 6 months of loneliness. I counted the days, but they felt the same. Every day was dark. Every night was long. Time moved, but I stayed stuck. My family kept their distance. They did not know how to handle me. Some friends tried to say I was lucky to be free. Their words hurt me more. Free. I did not feel free. I felt broken. I felt empty. One evening, I walked past a mirror. I stopped. I saw my own face. My eyes were red. My skin was pale. My lips had no smile. I stared at myself for a long time. I whispered, "Who are you now?" I had no answer. Without him, I was no one. At least that was what I believed. But even in the darkest nights, a small voice inside me refused to die. It whispered, "You are still here. Elisa, you are alive." I tried to push it away. I tried to silence it, but the voice returned. It came when I cried. It came when I sat alone. It said, "Your story is not finished." I did not believe it. But those words gave me something. A tiny spark. A reason to open my eyes in the morning. A reason to breathe one more day. 6 months passed in pain. But in that pain, something inside me changed. I realized that if I could survive those months, I could survive anything. The worst had already happened. Richard had left. My marriage had ended. Yet I was still breathing. I will not say I was strong then. I was not, but I was alive. And being alive meant there was still a chance. A chance for something new. A chance for me. At the end of those 6 months, I stood in front of the same mirror again. My eyes were still tired. But this time, I asked a new question. What if my life is not over? What if this is only the beginning? That thought stayed with me. It was small, but it was enough to change my heart. I decided I could not let the rest of my years vanish in tears. I had to try. I had to find out who I was without him. Those 6 months of darkness did not kill me. They shaped me. They prepared me. They made me ready for the next part of my life. I thought my story ended in grief. But destiny was holding a different page for me. Chapter 4, A Question in the Mirror. 6 months had passed. 6 months of crying, of begging God for answers, of feeling like a shadow. I thought I would never stand again. But one morning, something happened. I was walking slowly through the house. My eyes were tired. My steps were heavy. I stopped in front of the mirror. At first, I did not want to look. I hated my reflection, but I forced myself. I lifted my head. I looked at my own face. I saw a woman I did not know. Her eyes were swollen. Her skin was pale. Her lips were weak. I whispered to myself, "Who are you?" The voice was so soft, but it shook me inside. For years, I had only been his wife. That was my identity. I had lived for Richard. I had lived for his needs, his moods, his choices. Now he was gone, and I was left with nothing. I stood there for a long time. Tears filled my eyes, but I did not look away. I kept asking, "Who are you? Elisa? Who are you without him?" That was the first time in years I had spoken to myself. It felt strange. It felt painful, but also it felt new. I realized I had never asked that question before. I had never thought of myself as a person on my own. I was always part of him, his wife, his shadow, his helper, never me. The mirror did not answer, but the question stayed. I walked away, but the words followed me. Who am I? Who am I now? That day I could not stop thinking. I remembered the little girl I once was. I remembered dreams I once had. I remembered that I used to sing. I used to laugh. I used to want more. Somewhere along the way, I lost all of that. I gave it away. I buried it under duty. I cried again. But this time, the tears were different. They were not only for Richard. They were for me, for the woman I had forgotten, for the life I had sacrificed, for the years I could never get back. That evening, I sat at the table and wrote in a small notebook. I wrote one line, I am still here. My hand was shaking, but the words were clear. I am still here. It was not strength yet. It was not courage yet, but it was a beginning. The next morning, I looked in the mirror again. My face was the same, but I spoke out loud. I said, Elisa, you are not gone. You are not only his wife. You are you. The sound of my own voice surprised me. It was weak, but it was real. I had not heard myself in so long. I touched the glass and whispered, I will find you again. That promise became my new breath. It was small, but it kept me standing. The darkness was still there. The pain was still sharp. But now there was also a question that opened a door. Who am I if not his wife? I did not have the answer yet, but I was ready to search. That was the day my life began to change. Not in big steps, not with sudden joy, but with one question in the mirror. A question that gave me the power to start again. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe to our channel. English Through Story. Chapter 5. The First Steps to Freedom. The question in the mirror stayed with me. Who am I? Who am I without him? I cannot forget it. It followed me through the days. It whispered to me at night. It made me restless. But it also woke something inside me. One morning, I sat at the table. I held a pen in my hand. I opened a notebook and wrote again. This time, I wrote more than one line. I wrote, I am still here. I want to live. I must find myself. The words looked strange on the page, but they gave me strength. I decided to do one small thing, something just for me. For the first time in years, I cooked a meal that I liked. Not his favorite, not something he wanted, only mine. I sat at the table and ate slowly. Tears came to my eyes because it felt new. It felt like I was feeding myself, not just surviving. The next day, I looked at my hands. These same hands had washed, cleaned, pressed, and served for him. Now, I wanted them to work for me. I asked myself, what can I do with these hands? Then I remembered something years ago. I loved to sew. I loved to make small things with fabric, but I gave it up. Richard once told me it was a waste of time, so I stopped. That memory made me cry. But after the tears, I felt a spark. I went to the closet. I found an old box with needles and thread. My fingers shook as I touched them again. I began to stitch a small piece of cloth. It was simple, but it felt like life. That little stitch was my first step. The needle went in and out, and with every move, I felt a piece of myself return. I was not fast. I was not perfect, but I was alive. In the days that followed, I made more small things. A cloth bag, a scarf, a little cover for the table. I looked at them and smiled for the first time in months. I thought, this is me. This is my work. This is my choice. One afternoon, a neighbor visited. She saw one of the pieces I had made. She asked if I could make one for her. At first, I was shy. I said I was not good enough, but she insisted. She gave me a little money for it. My hands shook as I held the bills. It was not much, but it was mine. Money from my work, money from my time. That night, I sat in bed and stared at the money. I whispered, Elisa, you can do this. You can stand. It was not about the money itself. It was about the feeling. For the first time, I was not only a wife. I was a person who could create, who could earn, who could choose. Slowly, word spread. Other women asked me to make things. They praised my work. They told me I had talent. I felt something new. Respect. Not the kind I begged for from Richard, but the kind that came because of what I could do. Every time I worked with my hands, I felt lighter. Every time someone smiled at my creations, I felt seen. Every time I earned a little money, I felt free. But it was not only about sewing. It was about time. For years, my time was not mine. Every hour belonged to him. Now, even when I was alone, those hours belonged to me. I could use them however I wanted. That freedom scared me at first, but then it gave me peace. I realized I did not have to beg for value anymore. I could give myself value. I could decide what mattered. I could decide what to do. It was not easy. I still cried at night. I still miss him sometimes. I still felt the pain of being left. But I also felt something new growing inside me. Strength, hope, freedom. One evening, I looked in the mirror again. I touched the glass and whispered, "You are finding yourself, Elisa. You are more than his wife. You are you." This time, I believed it a little more. The first steps were small. A meal for myself, a stitch in fabric, a neighbor's smile, a little money in my hand. But those small steps carried me forward. They carried me out of the darkness. I was learning that I could live. I was learning that I could even rise. And this was only the beginning. Chapter 6, Success and Wealth. I never thought small steps could change a life. But little by little, my work began to grow. At first, it was only one neighbor, then another. Soon people I did not even know came to me. They wanted the things I made. They said my work was special. They said it had care inside it. The first time I earned real money, I sat and stared at it for a long time. It was not about the bills. It was about the meaning. For years I had served without pay, without thanks. Now, for the first time, the world was giving me something back. I saved that money in a small box. Each week, I added more. Every time I opened the box, I felt proud. It was proof that I could stand, proof that I was no longer helpless, proof that I could live without him. Orders kept coming. I began to work longer hours, but this time it did not feel like slavery. It felt like purpose. Each stitch was mine. Each design was mine. Each piece carried part of me. When people smiled and praised my work, I felt alive. I used the money to buy more material, better tools. I invested in myself, something I had never done before. With each step, my business grew. With each step, my confidence grew. Soon, I was earning more than I ever imagined. My savings increased. I paid bills without fear. I bought things without asking permission. I felt a power I had never known, the power of freedom. But the best part was not only money, it was respect. Women from the community came to me. They asked how I started. They asked how I kept going. They said I was an inspiration. I looked at them and smiled with tears in my eyes. Me, Elisa, who once thought life was over, was now giving hope to others. I began to help people. I gave free pieces to women who had little. I shared part of my earnings with families who were struggling. I listened to their pain, and I told them my story. I said, if I can rise, so can you. The more I gave, the richer I felt, not only in money, but in spirit. I was no longer empty. I was full of meaning, full of life. One day, a local paper wrote about me. They called me a woman of courage. They wrote about how I rebuilt myself after divorce. When I read the article, I cried, not because of sadness, but because my life, which once felt worthless, now had value in the eyes of others. Soon I was invited to speak to groups. I stood in front of women who had lost hope. I shared my story. I told them about the pain, about the nights of tears, about the mirror that asked me who I was. And I told them about the small steps, the first stitch, the first sale, the first smile. They listened with open hearts. Some cried with me. Some hugged me. After they told me, my words gave them strength. I realized then that my story was not only mine. It was a gift to others. Wealth came in many forms. Money, respect, freedom, peace. I had all of them now. Not because of him, not because of anyone else, but because I chose to stand, because I chose to live. There were still moments when I remembered the pain, but those memories no longer controlled me. They became fuel. They reminded me of how far I had come. I was no longer the woman who begged for love. I was no longer the wife who lived in fear of being left. I was Elisa, strong, independent, free. When I looked in the mirror now, I no longer asked, "Who are you?" I knew the answer. I smiled and said, "You are enough. You are more than enough." Success had changed my life. But more than that, freedom had given me peace. I no longer lived in darkness. I lived in light of my own making, and this was only the beginning. Like, subscribe and share. Chapter 7. The return of the man who left life had changed in ways I never imagined. I was no longer the woman who cried every night. I was no longer the wife who lived in silence. I had found myself. I had built something of my own. People respected me. Women looked at me as an example. I had wealth. I had freedom. And I had peace. Then one evening, something happened that I never thought would happen again. Richard came back. I was sitting at the table when I heard the knock. My heart skipped a beat. When I opened the door, I saw him. The man who had left me, the man who broke me, was standing there. His hair was more gray. His face looked tired, but his eyes were different. They were not cold this time. They were searching. For a moment, I froze. My hands shook. My breath caught in my chest. Memories came rushing back. Nights of tears. Days of loneliness. The moment he said he wanted a divorce. The sound of the door closing behind him. All of it hit me at once. He spoke softly. He said my name, Elisa. I did not answer at first. I only stared at him. Then I stepped aside, and he came in. We sat across from each other, just like we had so many times before. But this time the air was different. I was not the same woman anymore. I was not the one who begged. I was not the one who feared. I was someone new. He began to talk. He told me he had seen my name in the paper. He told me he heard about my work, about how people respected me. He said he was proud. His words sounded strange in my ears. Where was his pride when I pressed his shirts with fever? Where was his pride when I begged him not to leave? I listened in silence. Then he said the words I knew were coming. I made a mistake. I should not have left. I want to come back. My chest tightened. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to laugh. He wanted to come back now after all the pain. After I had rebuilt myself from nothing, I looked at him carefully. His eyes were soft, almost pleading. He was not the strong, cold man who once walked away. He was smaller now, weaker. But I remembered everything. I remembered the nights on the floor, crying till I could not breathe. I remembered the mornings when I had no reason to wake up. I remembered the shame of signing those papers with tears on my face, and I remembered how I rose. I remembered the first stitch, the first coin I earned, the respect in the eyes of women who looked up to me. The moment I looked in the mirror and told myself, "You are enough," he asked again. He said he was lonely. He said he wanted me back. He said we could start over. Tears filled my eyes, but they were not for him. They were for me, for the woman who had once begged the same man not to leave, for the woman who had been left like she was nothing. I told him softly, "You walked away when I gave you my whole life. You closed the door on me when I was on my knees. You left me when I was weak. Now I am strong and I will not go back." He lowered his head. He tried to argue. He said he was sorry. He said he was a fool. He said he wanted one more chance. I shook my head. "Richard," I said, "I forgive you, but I cannot take you back. I found peace without you, and I will not lose it again." The room was silent. He looked at me, but he could see it in my eyes. My decision was final. The woman who once lived for him no longer existed. He left again that night. But this time, I did not fall to the floor. I did not cry until I could not breathe. I did not beg. I stood tall. I watched him walk away, and I felt no fear. I felt free. When the door closed, I turned to the mirror. I looked at my reflection. I smiled through my tears. I whispered, "Elisa, you did it. You chose yourself." That was the moment I knew the truth. Divorce had not ended me. It had saved me. It had given me a second chance at life. And when the past came knocking, I was strong enough to say no. Like, subscribe, and share. Chapter 8. Choosing Peace Over the Past. When Richard walked out the second time, I did not cry. I did not fall on the floor. I did not beg. I stood still, and I felt a strange calm inside me. It was not anger. It was not joy. It was peace. For years, I had believed that he was my world. For years, I had thought my life would end without him. But now, as the door closed behind him, I knew the truth. I did not need him. I did not need his approval, his presence, or his love to exist. I had found myself, and that was enough. I went to the mirror like I had so many times before. I looked at the woman standing there. Her eyes were stronger now. Her lips had a faint smile. Her shoulders were straight. I whispered to myself, "You made it. Elisa, you survived. You grew. You chose yourself." The memories of pain were still inside me. They would never fully leave. But now they did not control me. They were part of my story, but not the whole story. They were the shadows that made my light shine brighter. I thought about Richard's words. He said he was sorry. He said he wanted me back. Years ago, I would have given anything to hear those words. I would have fallen at his feet. I would have thanked him just for staying. But now those same words meant nothing. They came too late. I forgave him in my heart. Not for him, but for me. I did not want to carry hate. I did not want to carry anger. I wanted peace. And peace only comes when you let go. So I let go. I let go of the years I gave away. I let go of the nights I cried. I let go of the woman who thought she was worthless. I closed that chapter not with bitterness, not with regret, but with grace. I stood by the window and whispered, "Thank you, life. Thank you for breaking me. Thank you for teaching me that I am more than what I lost. Thank you for giving me a second chance." In the days that followed, I worked as usual. I helped women who came to me for advice. I shared my story with them. I told them the truth. That pain can break you, but it can also build you. That love can hurt you, but self-love can heal you. That divorce is not always an ending. Sometimes it is the beginning. I saw hope in their eyes. Some of them were where I once was, crying in silence, begging for love, feeling invisible. I told them, "You are not invisible. You are enough. You can rise." And when they believed me even a little, I felt my purpose grow. I was no longer living in the past. I was no longer waiting for Richard to return. I was living in the present. I was living for myself and for others who needed to see that healing was possible. One morning, I woke up and smiled without reason. It had been years since that happened. I did not smile because of someone else. I smiled because I was alive, because I was free, because I was me. I had wealth now. I had respect. I had a name people knew. But none of those things were my real treasure. My real treasure was peace. The kind of peace that no one can take away. The kind of peace that comes from choosing yourself. I realized something that day. Divorce did not ruin my life. It gave me back my life. It gave me a chance to start again at 69. It gave me the strength to look at pain and still move forward. It gave me freedom. I will not lie. The journey was hard. There were nights when I thought I would not survive. There were mornings when I wished I would not wake up. But I did survive. I did wake up. And every step, every tear, every small act of courage led me here to peace. Now, when I sit with people, I do not hide my story. I tell it openly. I tell them about the pain, the loss, the nights of tears, and then I tell them about the freedom, the joy, the peace that came after. I want them to know that it is possible, that life does not end when love ends. Sometimes people ask me if I would ever take Richard back. I smile and say, I gave him my life once. Now this life is mine, and that is the truth. I do not hate him. I do not wish him harm. But my path is different now. My heart is free. My soul is calm. I choose peace over the past. When I look at the sunrise now, I whisper a prayer of thanks, not for what I lost, but for what I gained. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe to our channel English for a Day.